folks. Welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show. Coming on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And after 7 years and 3,500 primary source interviews, my show has become about rhythm, and rhythm is love. And my guest today is a master rhythmist who really learned to create new musical vocabulary on the bandstand with the iconic fusion group Chicago. He has continued on through dark tunnels and always looking towards the light. But at the end of the day, he understands that he needs to keep his heart open, and in doing that, he will continue to give love and inspire people in his world. Danny Seraphine, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks, Jake. That was quite the introduction, man. I'm almost red.
Well, I mean, you should listen back to I was doing monologues for 5 years, but this is just now. It's just riffing off the top of my head. So before.
That's always the best way, anyways, man. That's always the best way. It's the only way I can do it. Ad lib,
Yeah, it's totally ad lib. I just before we get into it, can you talk about? I just was talking to Sywell the other day, and I noticed you were up with Father Dom Famularo. You received a doctoral award?
Well, I much to my surprise, surprise. I was awarded an honorary doctorate in music from Five Towns College. It's a really great school. It's really an amazing school of learning and creativity, for the arts. And what can I say? I said to him, you sure you want to give me this? I quit school at 15. I mean, this is not what I expected out of life, and I'm totally honored. And what can I say? And without words, I mean, I was almost speechless. But it was a great experience. And then to go hang with Dominic for a couple of days, we were really close. He's such a great guy.
I love the cat so much, dude. He's been so helpful to me on my journey, and I'm going to Billy Cobham's Art of the Rhythm section to do a Facebook Live interview with Billy, Ron Carter, and Kenny Barron this summer. I mean, Dom is just.
That's going to be great.
It's going to be heavy.
Billy from me. He's a really good.
I mean, you guys are. Listen, man. I mean, I've interviewed Stanley Clarke twice, and he said, it's kind of the best kept secret, but the real inventors of new musical vocabulary are the rhythm sections. He was speaking about, guys like Tony Williams and Ron Carter. I wanted you to talk about creating new musical vocabulary on the bandstand, especially when you were in the Missing Links and eventually what became Chicago, and how you guys, as a rhythm section, created that vocabulary, new vocabulary.
Oh, it's just, the Chicago story was kind of an evolution on a couple of fronts. One, as far as the drumming part of it, was I was, basically, I started out as a Gene Krupa fanatic, right? As a kid, a very young kid, and so that was what better drum hero could you have than Gene Krupa?
Right.
He played, traditionally. He had swing and really exciting, and then. At age 16, I had already kind of connected with Walt and Terry. I was in the band The Missing Links, as a matter of fact, right before we formed what would be CTA in Chicago. Walt introduced me to the head of percussion at DePaul University, and he took me under. He said, you're really special. I'd love to work with you, and I think I could take you to bring, really bring special things out of you. And I said, well, I never graduated high school. I can't go to college. He said, well, he said, no. He said, I just want you to come. You come at the end of my day, and I'll spend an hour and a half with you, a couple times a month, and once a week. It was really great, and he turned me into a really what I would like to consider a really good musician. Besides being and I told him. And he wanted me to play vibes and marimba and all that, and I've tried to, but I said, you know what, dude, I can't do it. I can't be the great drummer that I aspire to be and play vibes. I mean, I'd be good, but it would spread me out too thin. And
Right.
he said, okay.
Interesting.
So it was really true, because it was, to me, to do both would have been, I wanted to be like Buddy at that time. And then he turned me on to Buddy and Max, and that's why, and Gene, and that's what I aspired to be, except in the rock world. And so, I guess what I'm getting at is so simultaneously while this is happening, and I'm like expanding my horizons and trying to figure ways to incorporate all these cool triplets and swing things into my rock playing. The band Chicago, the Chicago Transit Authority formed, and then Jimmy Pankow started writing these jazzy horn parts, and I started kicking them like big band, and it was kind of an evolution that kind of happened together, and that's how we created that dialogue, like you were saying. And Terry was a bass player in the two other bands prior to Chicago Transit Authority with me, so we had kind of had that lock thing going as bass player and drummer do, except now I switched it to him playing guitar, and of course we had Peter on bass, and he's a great bass player, and so we had this great, and Robert Lamb was super tasteful, really fine musician, so we had this really tasteful rhythm section. And yes, if you listen, I remember when we used to open our show, the Chicago Transit Authority, in the days of the Fillmores, and we would come out with just the rhythm section. We'd do this jam, right? Maybe 5 minutes of just crazy jam and rock, well, fusion-y, but more on the rock side. And all of a sudden the horns would come out and start a riff, and then boom, we were into it. People would just freak out because horn bands were pretty rare in those days, at least of that caliber. So, I mean, answers your question.
Well, no, you're whacked. I mean, I want you to talk about Terry Kath and you when he was playing bass. I mean, it's really important. The thing I was talking about with Billy this summer that Dom is also going to be part of. It's called The Art of the Rhythm Section, because my generation and younger are basically growing up listening to machine parts, copying machine parts, or just having drum machines do it. You can't increase musical vocabulary on the bandstand with machines. So, I mean, can you talk about how you and Kath used to woodshed together in Chicago, or even some of the early gigs? I mean, I've interviewed, what was so invigorating is that, I've interviewed John Clemmer, Ahmad Jamal, Hawk Walensky, Ray Neapolitan. The list goes on. I mean, you were there. So what were you and Kath doing to cook the groove early on? This is, before the Missing Links. What is the key to the art of the rhythm section, according to Danny Seraphine?
Well, the key is everybody really listening to one another and playing off one another. And it really is imperative that everybody listen to one another. I mean, guitar, drums, bass. The bass player's got a lot with the drummer, and vice versa. But like I said, in Chicago, Transit Authority in Chicago, I almost put priority of locking with Terry, because we were, and Peter too, but it was really, Terry and I were like laser sharp together, and Peter too. I mean, I just listened to those jams, and Peter never fancied himself as a really great bass player, a fusion bass player, but man, you hear him play some of that stuff, he plays it great. I mean, it's like he's so underestimated as a bass player because his singing, because he's such a great singer, which is, he's so undoubtedly one of the great pop singers of all time, that and people don't give him credit for how great a bass player he was, and he is. I guess he's playing bass again. I haven't seen him perform in a solo act, but I know he's playing bass again. I mean, I told him at one point, I said, man, you without a bass is like McCartney or Sting without a bass. It's just not right. And he thanked me, and I think hopefully he took it to heart, and maybe had a little influence in him picking up the bass again. But it's give and take, right? You can't always have your way, obviously, in life, and you can't always have your way on the bandstand. I mean, unless you're the absolute leader, like Buddy, or like I am maybe with my band. But I'm not that kind of player. I know that in order to take, you got to give.
Oh yeah.
And vice versa.
Oh,
it's the exchange. It's the exchange of playing together that really makes it magical.
Well, I mean, Danny, I mean, one reason I'm trying to stretch back is because whether it's the Grateful Dead or whether it's Tim Buckley or whether it's, I interviewed Steve Cropper yesterday, and Al Jackson told him in Duck Dunn, he said, guys, it's not about doing what you're doing, it's about looking like you know what you're doing. And what he meant by that was, back then you were playing, I'm talking early mid 60s, you were playing out of PA systems, so you could barely hear the vocals. And to me, your ears, I mean, you're talking about listening, okay? Your ears had to grow so much at that time because can you talk about how your ears grew on the bandstand? Because once the monitors came in and technology sort of caught up, early on, those cats were just blasting stuff out of the PA system that very archaic. You couldn't really hear anything. So your ears had to grow. I remember Mike Mainieri said to me, I mean, he had a stretch because the acoustic bass wasn't amplified. To me, it's these nuances of listening versus hearing that is essential. And do you remember playing in some of these upholstered sewers when you just had horrendous PA systems and had to just sort of swing and ad lib it?
No, yeah, I still have to swing it. It's just really, I'm so used to that I don't. I mean, right now in what I'm playing, I have very seldom ever wear in-ears. I like hearing stuff acoustically if possible, unless it's just such an awful environment. But that's just the way I became accustomed. I remember we played the Whiskey with our new band CTA, and it was the first time I played it in like 40 years or whatever. And there was no monitor for me. I ended up turning my monitors off, and I just played off of feeling and listening, and making sure I wasn't overplaying too hard because I couldn't hear myself. And using all my training, it's almost a challenge. And I almost played better because of it, because I was so in tune with myself and trying to. It's not their fault. They're kind of born in the time that they're born. They don't have the training grounds that we had. To fine tune their skills and to grow, and they have all the technology and knowledge, and you can hear all these drummers. I mean, they do this amazing. They have all these chopmeister monster guys that they can and that they can emulate or try to emulate, and then they have guys guys with great feel and great legacy, with instructional DVDs. So they have all the knowledge that you could ever imagine. But they don't have the practical hands-on training. Like when I was 16 and I was joined up with Terry and Walton, I was in a band there was Jimmy Ford and the Executives, and it was Dick Clark's road band.
Wow.
Fantastic band. And my first road gig, I got to back up Chuck Berry, I mean, that's that would be like the most valuable lesson any young drummer wet behind the ears, and I was wet behind the ears could get. I mean, basically, throw it up on stage. Okay, here you go, Johnny B. Good. Roll over Beethoven. And watching him doing his chicken walk across the stage or whatever he did, it was freaking surreal. And playing with. It was just. I'm very, very lucky and fortunate and blessed. I just can't thank God enough for how much.
Let me ask you something, because the Loading Zone, which was a band out in the Bay Area, the drummer George Marsh used to play with Chuck Berry, and he's like, Chuck had no qualms if you were playing in 7/4. I mean, the guy had an elastic feel to himself, but was it more just the idea that you would get off the bandstand and say, holy shit, I just played with Chuck Berry, or was it lessons, even nonverbal lessons, that he would communicate with you on the bandstand that were cathartic for you?
With Chuck Berry, it was just playing all that, playing with the absolute original, right?
Right.
I mean, and it was only like 3 or 4 songs, right? And you guys are great, and we'll see you later, But it was, and then sitting around and watching the Four Seasons and Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels and the Yardbirds, the first of North America. It was a really amazing show. It was very. It just has stayed with me. I remember the gig so well because it was the first road gig and the first time that I was thrown into the frying pan. and it felt great to survive it and do well, and it was an amazing experience, and there were others, but that was the one that was landmark for me.
How would it work? I mean, Dick would do like an opening act, and then you'd have a musical guest perform. I'm just for somebody who wasn't even birthed at that point. What would that? To me, that was one of the other things too. Red Fox would open for, or Richard Pryor would open for Miles Davis, or you'd have this wild sort of like mixing of poetry with jazz. It was so diverse, and it wasn't just Bill Graham. This was happening all over the country, where you would get these inflections of Latin rock, and then Chicago style kind of rock, and then Preservation Hall jazz band, whatever it was. What was that sort of? It was not a formula trip, Danny. That's what I have a big problem with today. You talk about these chopmeisters. I wind up staring at the wall, man, because there's not a lot of soul. Yeah. Not that they don't have great facility, but that's not what really. It's about a conversation. It's Paul Motion. It's Danny Seraphine. It's that. So what was that? I mean, did you play behind Dick, or did you have your own set? How did that work?
Well, my stint in that band was short lived, but what they did is it's a little bit against what you said. That was formula, because it was Dick Clark's tour. So he'd have the Shirelles, he'd have Bobby Rydell, he'd have Freddie Cannon, he'd have the Paul Revere and the Raiders, and Tommy Rowe and Lou Christie, and we would be the backup band for all of them. So that's what I'm saying. It was an amazing experience. And it was an amazing band. It was a horn band. So what you're talking about is when Bill Graham was famous for that, and bringing, having Miles Davis with Santana, or and when we played. When we played, hold on one quick second.
Sure.
The very first gig I ever played for Bill Graham was with Santana. It was the Santana Blues Band. They weren't called. It was Chicago Transit Authority. We were opening up for Janice, and it was such an amazing experience. Santana's drummer. It was pre Mike Sharif.
Uh-huh.
Santana's drummer didn't show up, so he comes running backstage frantically. Denny, he has that Latin accent. Can you play the blues? Can you play the blues? I said, I'm from Chicago. I think so. And he said, I said it kind of sarcastically. He said, okay, man, my drummer didn't show up. Can you please come and play my set? And I'm going, God, I've never heard you. He said, no, please come up. So I went up and jam. I mean, that's where ears came. Just listened and made sure I started when they started and ended at the right time, and everything went great. And Santana and I were very close for many years after that. We did a lot of gigs together, and then of course they had the newer, the version with Greg Raleigh and Mike Sharif and D Brown. I think it was the bass player, and oh God.
No. I mean the guy that was. I vetted this. Carabello. No, I was saying. Was that the first time that you played with like timbales and congas? Like Carabello told me.
No. There was no. It was called the Santana Blues Band. It was pre Mike Sharif and Greg Raleigh, and he's playing blues basically. So I came up and did a blues set with him.
Right. No, because Carabello was in that. Carabello was in that blues band. He got either kicked out for a minute, but he said they opened for Charles Lloyd. They had no bridges to any tunes. It was just it was archaic music. I mean, it was blues, like you said. Yeah, but it was.
He may have been there, but I remember when they did this latest reunion, I ran into him backstage at the Mohegan Sun. It was so great to see him. The way Carlos kind of found him. Well, he found him on the street, which was sad, but that was great the way Carlos brought those guys back. I think that's commendable. It was a commendable thing for Carlos to do, and a really cool thing, Oh,
I mean,
it was just. Listen, the bottom line is I had an amazing, myself and guys like Billy Cobham and Steve Smith and all the cats and Denny Sidewell. We had an amazing breeding ground to come up in, and it enriched our musical vocabulary so much.
We have a
So,
we have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I'm gonna put this track in for you, and then we'll come back and break it down. Okay?
okay, cool.
For me, it goes, like from a rock player to jazz. I mean, most rock players can't play jazz. There's a few that can. Like Steve Smith, Greg Bissonette, those kind of guys can play pretty much anything. But I'm not that tuned into the jazz players that play jazz rock. I mean, jazz rock basically is, just an eighth note feel on whatever's going on, mostly. I mean, you could translate it like that, because jazz as a whole is a dotted 8 and 16 bounce feel,
Right.
and rock is based on an eighth note feel. So you get, that's one of the differences there, is that. And so like when I grew up playing some jazz when I was a kid, I could play jazz a bit now, but I don't consider myself a great jazz player. I mean, like Cindy Blackman, I just saw her play. She's a pretty damn good jazz player. So she can play jazz rock and jazz rock, I think.
Did you see her in the jazz context or with Santana?
I saw her in the jazz club here in Manhattan in the last couple of months, and she was awesome. I've done clinics with her. She's very Tony Williams oriented, and but she was really great. She's got a great feel, and I mean, with the jazz cymbal thing, there's a dotted 8 and 16 feel that goes ding, dick-a-ding, 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 like that.
Right.
And most of the jazz guys would play that, and they have the hi-hat on 2/4, and then they do improvise in between the snare and the bass drum. But there's some jazz players like Tony Williams that varied off of that. Even Elvin Jones. I mean, those guys varied off of that ride cymbal. So that ride cymbal thing might have been something more, like in the 40s and not experimental. It's just like when you play.
Well, you have any idea who that is?
Mm-hmm. Carmine, of course. Of course I know.
I mean, your ears are huge, man. You nailed it, dude. That was my interview with Carmine from December 2016. So I want you to. I mean,
yeah, I know.
This is, and he's. I mean, coming from Vanilla Fudge, you must have shared bills with them too.
Yeah, we never did any gigs together, but obviously I love the early stuff, that he did, and he's a great drummer. He's a great rock drummer. He really is. He's not a jazz rock guy, but he's a great. And maybe he could if he wanted to, but he's got great chops. He's a real powerful, really great. Got a great feel. He's a great rock drummer.
I guess my question was that I wanted you to talk about for peeps listening all over the world that in my mind, labels and genres have stifled musical vocabulary. I mean, you can look at radio stations, say it's all rock format, all R&B. I mean, when Earl Palmer was going out when he first got his gigs, or Hal Blaine got his gigs, it was like, play a rock feel. It was about a feel. It wasn't this, you get locked into these genres. And, Carmine, he was playing jazz in mafia clubs in New York, and he might not be like a quote unquote, bebopper playing the quote unquote real shit, but there's inflections, just like Keltner. The reason you guys are so important to the lineage of music is because everything that you play has inflections of feel, all feel. It's not genre related. I just want you to riff on the idea of playing how why it's more important to feel the drummer than to hear the drummer.
Well, because first of all, you're complimenting. You got to compliment. To me, the drummer's job is first and foremost to make everyone around him sound better. Okay, and there's obviously you keep in really great time. I mean, you're not the only person keeping time, contrary to what other people think. But the feel, you got to match the feel of what's being played around you, and you got to make sure everybody else does too. Because if the bass player's in one feel, the guitar's in another, it doesn't work. So when all of a sudden the song transitions to what can be a jazz feel. Now what the bass player is playing, kind of kind of hints of jazz or something, and that's when I can go in and swing a little bit on top of it, or I may do a swing, go with the Chicago stuff where I'll go from a strict rock part to a strict jazz part, and try and then come back and combine the two where I'm playing, like he says, you're playing kind of the jazz ride thing, which I do, and doing the bass drum more rock, because with rock and what's different? Rock is a bass drum dominated bass drum and snare drum, but the bass drum really pushes the song. It really drives the song. Where in jazz, it's the ride cymbal, and the snare drum to a certain degree in some respects, but it's the ride cymbal and hi hat, and the bass drum is used just for accent. So that's where the jazz guys had so much trouble trying to play rock, because they sounded so stiff, and the rock guys.
You're nailing it. You're nailing it.
Yeah, the rock guys can't stay with the eighth note feel. They got to go back to the quarter note, and that's difficult. That's a really difficult transition for both the jazz player and the rock player. The jazz player wants to feel it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and the rock guy's going 1, 2, 3, because it works against both tempos. It's just a matter of where the quarter note is and where the eighth note is, and combining the two is where you really get it. So and when you need to go to strict jazz, you've got to just stay on the jazz feel. And it's not easy. It's not easy because most rock guys can't do it, and it's understandable. It's difficult because it's an absolutely opposite feel, and that's where. And Buddy, towards the end of his life, and I love Buddy, and Buddy to me was still the greatest drummer of all time in many respects. Not I loved Max and I loved Tony, and I absolutely loved Alvin.
Sure.
And Joe Jones was such a heavy. Joe Jones was to me maybe the greatest drummer, but it's hard to say. But Buddy, towards the end of his life, I heard some of his recordings, and Buddy finally got it. Was finally really starting to get the quarter note lock feel with what he played, and it was had Buddy lived longer, it would have been some amazing music that he would have done, and it was so hard for me in the beginning was how do I bridge that gap seamlessly and without losing the feel, right? Without losing the groove, and then going back to rock and having to be right in the pocket and maybe jump into jazz and having to be in a really true jazz pocket. It's taken a long time. I'm still working on it,
Well, I mean, I think that's. I wanted to know how you met Papa Joe.
Oh, it was. We used to do a lot of our recording, and of course, we played in New York City a lot. New York City has always been a great market for Chicago, and I went into Frank Appolito's Pro Percussion. I think it was called.
Sure.
Frank Appolito's.
Yeah.
I think it was professional. And he said, Danny, Joe Jones is teaching, and you might want to consider, because he knew that I liked to. He knew what I was trying to do. I was trying to really stretch the limits, of rock, and so he introduced me to Papa Joe, and Joe was cool, and I started taking lessons with him, because I wanted to learn how to play brushes first and foremost. I really wanted to learn. And he's the
I love it.
He's one of the masters.
Oh
He
my
also
God!
taught me
Ridiculous.
He taught me how to swing hard, and Joe was an influence on. Buddy, Louis took lessons from him, and it was such a great privilege to study with Joe. And Joe was a guy that we would do our lesson, and then I would take him. We'd hang out and go to. It was this really cool bar where all the jazz cats hung out, and we'd go there. And it was just he had those brushes, those telescopic brushes, and he'd take a newspaper. That was a Joe Jones thing. He'd take the newspaper out of his pocket, rolled up, put it on the bar, and start playing brushes on it. It was so freaking cool.
What was it Jim and Andy's? What was the club? What was the club? What was the bar?
Oh, I don't remember. It was just a bar. I don't remember.
This is unbelievable.
You're talking. It was in the 70s. It was right before Joe was when we did the Carnegie Hall. So it was one of the. I mean, I did it over the course of about a year as I studied with Joe, and I probably took 10 lessons. 8 lessons. It was, it was just wonderful. Man, he was and he came. I remember one night at Carnegie Hall. I mean, that was a big deal, Carnegie Hall. We sold out a whole week, and everybody was like, Leonard Bernstein was coming to this performance. Everybody's nervous. Leonard Bernstein, but Joe Jones was coming as my guest to see me, and Joe and I could give a damn. I mean, don't get me wrong. Very respectful to Leonard Bernstein, a brilliant guy.
Sure.
Really,
sure.
I got to tell you, he was not that nice. He was not that. He was pretty arrogant. But Joe Jones being out there in the audience, that freaked me out more than anything. And then at the end of the show, when Joe came back, you sounded great, man. You sounded great with that voice. I said, oh boy, it was just really one. I've had so many great experiences. I tell you what, I pinch myself when I think about, being able to hang out. I hung out with Buddy. I hung out with Louie. Hung out with Elvin Jones. Hung out with Joe Jones. Never really had a chance. I only got to see Max one time. It was great to see Max. It's an amazing drummer. And Tony Williams, would have loved to have connected with him. When I tried to, it wasn't real friendly. It was a little bit standoffish, but
yeah, no, he was kind of an introverted guy to a degree.
Yeah.
I've heard, but I, this is more of a sort of a spiritual question, Danny. But I mean, I've talked to many guys and gals, and they're generally very secure with themselves because they understood at a certain point that they had nothing to do with it, that the music was coming through them from the heavens. And there are other cats who I haven't really talked to, but there's plenty of people out there that are completely jaded, even though they've had quote unquote tremendous commercial success, because their ego has superseded the idea, or they feel that they are responsible for what's coming through them. And I kind of wanted you to talk to the audience about your evolution when it kind of dawned on you that you're just a kind of an astral projector looking above, being a part of a unit, and that it's just coming through you, and it's not really about you.
Well, I think I've kind of always played with inspiration, via inspiration. So I really believe, because playing is like praying to me, and it's always been that. It's never been anything different. Gangs and stuff, and music pulled me off of the streets and just gave me the life that I have today. So it's always been, to me, and I look at it in a very reverent way, and I always do. And so therefore, I'm a real, I just don't like it. All these bands that are playing with tracks now, I don't like it that it's become so unreal in a lot of respects, especially at the higher echelons. It just, to me, music is like praying. It's spiritual, and that's what makes it work, and that's why you're touching people's soul, because it's intangible. You can't really put it into words, if you know what I'm saying. There's no words to put it into other than you feel it. If you, and I'm really fortunate that I'm connected that way. And so when I play, it's not every time, but most times I play, I just go into a zone and really, lose myself, so to speak, and sometimes, the guys will be there, it's an end of a song and they're cueing and my eyes are closed and they're, they have to wait longer because I'm not watching. I mean, I'm not feeling, but that was exactly what Terry and I did together, and Peter too. I mean, it was really when the band was really great, when the band was happening, which was really most of the band. I always played via inspiration. Yeah, I mean, once we got into the big setup where everybody was 50 feet away from one another on these big platforms, it became really hard to do that. Still tried to, but it became really hard, and it wasn't conducive. So I like being set up close to one another and being close to my bandmates, and that's so I really can't say when, other than I think it's always been that way.
Well, no, I guess part of my show deals with the metaphysical, and I've talked to Lenny White and Billy Cobham, who neither of them have ever done a drug in their life, and they've both talked to me about leaving their physical body on the bandstand. Can you talk about an experience where you left your physical body on the bandstand?
Yeah, I mean, that happens. It happens almost every time I play. Not every time, but almost whenever. I remember one of the first times that happens, and it was just with that band Jimmy Ford and the Executives, and I remember playing a show at a ballroom, and walking off stage, and I'm like woozy almost because I got high. It's the first time I'd ever gotten what's called high on the music.
Right.
I literally, and Walt walked up to me and said, "You got high. You really got off that time, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, I did." He said, "This is." So it was like, it was actually being high without drugs or anything, and it was, it's something that we all strive for. Don't always get to, but as I'm getting older, since I've had a lot happen to me. I basically had everything taken away from me, and for reasons that no need to go into. We don't have a show long enough. It's in my book,
Well, we can we can do a couple parts here, but I don't even want to go there. To me, it's not even. I mean, you're a resilient character. That's all that matters.
Yeah. I mean, but it's something that I strive for. That musicians, that we all strive for. Once you've experienced it, it's something we strive for every time we play. Sometimes things get in the way. Sometimes technical difficulties get in the way. Sometimes acoustics aren't. Sometimes the vibes are weird. Sometimes you're just not in the right space to do it. But I always aim to do that. I always aim to get high from the music, and quite often I do. Quite often. I did a session in Chicago when I was there doing the Chicago Drum Show with Down. I did a recording session. I had to overdub drums, and the drums, I was just overdubbing drums. It was a fairly cool track, but I really got into the track and lost myself. And the people were they were videoing it. I wasn't even aware that they were, boom, all of a sudden I was in my own little world of drumming and making that song better, making it better, So,
Do you find do you find sometimes in any capacity just sort of kind of rising above on like almost two tracks and being above the band and then being able to see that you're a part in the machine? I mean, when you're in that meditation, it is so heavy. I mean, I'm not a professional drummer, but I feel that when I play with my friends, and then you talk to cats like Johnny Vodakovich, and he's talking about seeing these colors, or just this painting, and he's like, maybe I'm the green. I don't know, but he can see these train tracks, and then he can see down below, and he can see that everybody's playing their role. And then at that point, it's like you're just you're just a conduit, And I feel like, when you go to see performances today, maybe it's because you guys were on the bandstand 6 nights a week, you guys had so much opportunity to play. Maybe it's younger cats are insecure that they don't know the next time they're going to get up on the bandstand, so they have to wank it all the time. There's a number of factors, but it's this conduit. It's this ability of transcending, and then ultimately the most magical part is when it connects with the audience and then comes back to the band, which I know Chicago, you did that. You guys have gotten the groove, and that was happening all the time. That's the magic of music.
Yeah, without a doubt. And with my new band, I have a new band called, well, it's not that new, I've been together since 2006, but really just starting to get more known. California, CTA, California Transit. It's got, and Bill Champlin's in the band with me.
Such a badass that guy is.
Yeah. And the guitar player that I'm with, Mark Bonilla, is just a monster. And we have a monster guitar keyboardist by the name of Ed Roth, and a singer by the name of Tony Grant, just a great singer. And that's happening with that band a lot, and it's great. It's what we shoot for every time we play, And sometimes we fall short, but even when we fall short, people say you were great, and I don't think they're necessarily blowing smoke. But it's like when it's that extra special, out of body world, in a different world. Well, that's when it's really, really a special time, and. I don't know if I can tell you I'm sitting above and flying above high. I can just tell you that I'm definitely in the heavens.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And it's just it's a glorious feeling, and it's a drug. It's a drug, and it's in and of itself that you always want. But thank God it's a healthy one. It's one that is not. It's not bad for you, or it's one that's really beneficial. So,
what did if you could encap? I just want to go back to Papa Joe. What did he help you bring to Chicago, technically or feel wise?
Well, first and foremost, brushwork. Okay, my brushwork, and you can hear it on Chicago 7 and Double Sweet. And ironically, the first time I did brushes on a record was "If You Leave Me Now," but that's a brush. That's a kind of a tasteful brush. Very tasteful.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
that was post Papa. That was post your lessons with Papa.
Well, no, I don't think it would. No, I don't think it's post. My lessons were not. My lessons with Papa were Carnegie Hall days. So I'm not great with dates. But if we look at when Carnegie Hall was released, we went to Google for a quick second.
Sure.
And do Carnegie Hall, Chicago's Carnegie Hall, when it was released. That'll give you the time frame.
And what was the name of the tune you first did brushes on? You just said. What was the name of that?
If You Leave Me Now.
All right. So you can take. So I guess so. The brushwork, obviously. What about the feathering of the bass drum?
Well, the feathering of the bass drum is probably something that every rock drummer has a real hard time with. Damn, because that's totally against rock. Okay, you don't feather bass.
It's a lost art too, man. It's a lost art.
Yeah, I can tell you that's probably. I still work on that, man. That's something that I have to work on. Like when I sat in with the Buddy Rich band. When I sat in with the Buddy Rich band, that's something I had to really work with. And when I listened to some recordings of some tapes of it, because in the New York part, the horn section was, we didn't get a chance to run the Buddy stuff. I did some Chicago things with the big band, and therefore it was a bit of a stress fest. And you can hear it. I'm playing the bass drum too hard. I'm not feathering it well enough. So. Anyways.
Well, no. Okay. So
feathering the bass drum is an art that I'm still working on. Okay. Truth be told, but that's the great part about you're still learning and.
Well, that's what I was getting at more with feeling the drummer. Again, it's changed. Just Chicago at Carnegie Hall says 71. Okay, so you started playing brushes and then
and there's a song called Policeman that I played. There's other. I used that on others, but the big one was Double Sweet, and Double Sweet wasn't until Chicago 7, which is 75 or something. But that's where I really got to do Joe's. I did a brush solo, on Double Sweet.
I'm going to get these records immediately. I'm so glad to be able to talk to you because you see the original Chicago Transit Authority record, but I want to go deeper into the Seraphine jazz bag. Did you grow up in the same neighborhood as Butterfield?
No. I don't think. I think Butterfield is South Side. If I'm correct. Am I right? Is Butterfield on South Side?
I thought he was. But your neighborhood was a mixed neighborhood, though, was it?
Well, it was Italian. It was Italian, Irish, and Polish. It was It wasn't African American, no.
Right. So, because when I talked to Barry Goldberg, he said, we were on the opposite side of the tracks, but we had to go search out. We heard that music on the radio. And he's talking more like heavy blues, Howlin' Wolf and Muddy.
Yeah, well, those were the cats, man. There were clubs in Chicago. You could just go see them. It was great, man. I remember that Howlin' Wolf was playing at a club real close to where we were playing in downtown. It was really cool.
Yeah. Did you gravitate more towards the blues, or were you more into did you go see Ahmad at Pershing, like when he had his residency there? Were you doing it all?
Well, there's a Plug Nickel in Chicago where you could come and you could go. It's in Old Town. That's where Miles and Jack McDuff and Jimmy Smith, and you could sit outside because you couldn't go in. I wasn't old enough, but the drummer was like sitting in a storefront. It was really amazing. So, and then Mr. Kelly's. No, I always know. I love it. I was more towards the R&B, jazz. Blues as a drummer is not the greatest idiom. That's not the greatest genre for a drummer. there's an art to playing the blues for sure, but that's I haven't had a whole lot of experience playing blues. But I love the shuffle. I can tell you that.
Well, that's what I wanted.
they would
That's what
enjoy
you just
it.
read my mind. Is that how did you learn
Yeah.
to play a shuffle beat?
Well, don't forget, one of the records that I learned on, and really was really formative, was the Gene Krupa story.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of shuffles, but the rock shuffle and the blues shuffle just developed it and learned it. And Grady Tate when the first Chicago album came, see Chicago Transit Authority. Grady Tate, through a friend of mine, reached out to me and loved it and kind of mentored me. And what better shuffle player?
Are you kidding me? How did you know Grady before that?
The guy, a friend of mine, his name is John Mulvey. In fact, he lives in Scottsdale. He used to have a drum shop called Chicago Drum Shop, and he was really close with Grady. And he introduced me, and my very first drum clinic was with Grady Tate. It was Grady Tate and Danny Seraphine. It was really.
Are you?
Really,
that
really
is
great.
so. Grady Tate, man.
Yeah.
He
man.
was a heart of gold, man. You got to connect me with that guy in
Yeah.
Scottsdale, dude. That's unbelievable. Because that dude, Tate was like, I mean, he was like, he'd see Alan Schwartzberg playing for like $12 a week, and then all of a sudden he went up and gave him a big bear hug and was so proud of him. He said, "Listen, Stan Getz is looking for a drummer, Next thing you know, Stan's calling Schwartzberg to go to Ronnie Scott's. I don't know. There was a lineage. It was you. I know you feel blessed. It's just, how do you feel?
Yeah, that's another name I left out of the guys that I got to hang with. Grady Tate took me under his wing. He took me to see Max the first time. It was at what used to be the Cotton Club in Harlem. And he sat me down right behind. Max was sitting up on a stage riser, really high, actually. And I just sat right behind him the whole night and absorbed. He said, "Now I want you to see the master. I want you to learn." It was really like Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? taking his, and he said, "I'll be back by the end of the night to come and get you, kid." And I remember 4 bars into the song, Max dropped a stick, and I never in my whole life felt so good, because I said, if Max can drop a stick, you're not just one, especially if you play traditional, which I do. I don't play all traditional, but I switch, but traditional, you tend to it's easy to get caught, and you can't squeeze, you're not supposed to hold it that tight. So, yeah, Max was, Grady Tate's, first of all, if you listen to his feel, man, oh, what a feel. What a feel.
Well, the greatest thing, the coolest thing is the guy, he was I can't even imagine going to these studio sessions, these CTI A&M sessions with 4 guitar players, Herb Ellis, McLaughlin, and then Grady's the drummer on that. And then ultimately he gives the gig off to Billy. Before I let you go, I was pretty jaded in a good way. About a month ago, I had the chance to go to Bogey's to see a dear friend of mine, Emil Richards, and Danny Seraphine was in the crowd with. And I was really pretty hammered, and I had not seen John in a few years. And John and I did a cosmic interview, and he was not in the mood for me at that time, but you were there, and I was like, I've been talking to your wife a little bit about like trying to set up an interview with you, and then eventually Cywell got me to you. But, I mean, the fact that him and Porcaro have been playing since they were 10 years old, the most badass freaking guys in the world. But I actually wanted to ask you, I my gut tells me that you met Densmore when you guys got the gig at Whiskey. Am I right, or am I right?
No, I didn't meet Densmore then. In fact, the only guy I met was Morrison, and it was pretty. It was a bit cosmic.
Yeah, I mean that's a cosmic.
It was a little bit cosmic.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends now is Robbie Krieger, and John. I like John a lot. John's quirky, but he's a really good guy, and I really like him. And I love. Nobody plays the Medora stuff like John does. When I play his stuff, I try to do my best to emulate him, but I can't. So I do Danny Seraphine's version of John Densmore. But yeah, there's some great drum parts. Like the beginning, the break on through. Kind of the bossa nova. And even the bossa nova part in Light My Fire. You got to rock it up a little bit, otherwise it starts. It's not that easy to play and play it right. So I probably need to get together with John. I should get together with John and have him show it to me. Because I play with Robbie all the time. In fact, I'm going to play with Robbie Tuesday. We're doing a Boys and Girls benefit in L.A. at Vibrato.
That's Herb Albert's club. Yeah, we're hoping. I'm doing a Stan Getz. I'm doing a documentary on Stan Getz. So we're hoping to get some funding from Herb. But you're playing Vibrato with Krieger.
Yeah, and my band CTA. Yeah, we're doing it.
Well, I was going to say, make sure that because sometimes I hear people say, "Don't play above the conversation of the audience." I hope you guys can play loud.
Well, we're going to have to. It's going to be. We're going to have to play above that. We're not a cocktail hour band. Not, Doors in Chicago music. Hello. I mean, we got to watch it. You can't blow the club out, but it's going to be above the conversation. So. They're going to have to get used to it, and we'll probably never get. I don't know. I heard it's a really cool club, but yeah, it's more geared towards jazz and maybe easier jazz.
Yeah, well, I'm curious to get your to find out how that goes, and I would really love to pick up on set 2 with you in the near future if possible.
We will.
Right. It was great.
I'd love to. It was a great interview, Jake.
Well,
enjoyed it very much.
Well, I appreciate it, man, and God bless Terry Kath wherever he is. He's looking down, and thank you to.
Yeah, he's in guitar heaven with Jimi Hendrix, and there's all the other cats that have passed.
And all the other cats, man. But no, man, seriously, keep swinging, and let's stay in touch. And it was really just a high honor. And if you get a chance, I'm going to be transcribing a lot of these stories. Friend me on Facebook. I'll send you a request. I'm friends with your wife, but I disseminate a lot of this stuff.
I don't have a page that I can have fans. I have that. What do you call it?
You got a fan. You got a fan page. Yeah, you got a fan page.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but if you like, what you can do, if you like that page, then it's like me and my friend, and so you can just send me stuff, and it's cool. But you got my email and stuff now.
Yeah. No, we'll hook it. And also, I'm going to be out. I'm going to be out in Southern California in June. I'll send you the dates. If any of your bands are playing, I'd love to come and blow you guys out on Facebook.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers, bro.
You too, my friend. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Just another whistle stop. Danny Seraphine, legendary drummer. We'll be back with Ian Neville in a little bit on the Jake Feinberg Show.